Welcome to the Reconnected podcast, a home for sharing, understanding, and growth for the retail grocery store industry. During each episode, we will meet an amazing member of our community as we learn about their story and jointly explore the intricacies and challenges of our supply chain. Through it all, we'll remember and honor that everything starts with the real people who spend so much of their lives supporting the retail food supply chain. We will bring together the voices of manufacturers, distributors, and retailers as we journey together to help our industry reconnect. My name is Luke Abbott, and I'm excited to have you join us. Thank you so much for joining the inaugural Reconnected podcast. So honored to have you here, to have you joining this community of people. And it truly is a community of people who are trying to bring positive change to the CPG space and grocery. I thought I'd start off with Jimbo as the first person that joined me as part of this conversation. To me, Jimbo is the father of natural in America. I don't know if you know, but he was one of the three folks who got together and created Infra. This organization is the backbone that supports the competitiveness of natural markets across America. It creates this vibrant community of natural markets that services their communities in ways that I guess complement the bigger retailers out there as well. Jimbo also operates 4 world-class stores in the natural space that have evolved so much in over 30 years that he has owned and really was the founder of this chain. In my mind, Jimbo's the man that we start with. I'm excited that you'll be able to hear some of his story and his thoughts about how we can reconnect. Thank you for joining this first podcast, and I look forward to your comments. Let's join Jimbo and me mid-conversation.
Wherever I go, I hear a lot of pessimism. I hear a lot of negativity. The manufacturer community toward distributors and retailers, distributors about manufacturers and retailers, and I'm seeing an industry change that I felt we were really aligned in our supply chain, like we were all making money together. To one now where I see a lot of disconnection, and so the name of this podcast is Reconnected, and the idea here is doing my part, relationships that I have to try to reconnect us. And I thought starting with you would be great because you started a number of years ago, back in the 1980s and even 1970s, I believe, back at OB People's.
Talking about age again, Luke.
OB People's co-op, right? And I maybe seeking to get some wisdom, some ideas of what you've seen in your career, and we'll dig in. I have some specific questions for you, but that's kind of my intention here is to really try to bring us back together. And I think if we can bring back the alignment between every step of our supply chain, that magic can happen, that we all can make money, that this industry can be more of a positive place. And even back into some more idealism, I feel like some of the idealism is leaving too, or not as palpable as it once was. And that's what I hope to reconnect here. Jimbo and I do go back a number of years. I think I used to be your distributor. I remember meeting you at the Horton Plaza grand opening, I think for the first time. And then certainly when I sold to Cahey, we had some fun with Brandon Barnholt from Cahey at a football game, right as I was selling my company to him, and eventually joined your team. And I think we both entertain that idea because this idea of like what Jimbo's represents and making sure Jimbo's goes into the future, right? And really, in my mind, was like the standard bearer of our industry. I saw other retailers going away from their standards, but you never vacillated. One of the themes I wanted to talk to you about is I'm thinking about the decision that you made to make all of the produce organic, and that happened while I was working with you.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing from the leader of produce, like, well, you may not get grapes in January because there wasn't an organic supply chain for them. And there was this idea that you might lose some sales, and that might not be good for business, and consumers might go buy their grapes elsewhere. And I'm curious about that moment, and then I'm curious about other moments where there are these decisions you had to make that maybe on the surface appeared risky or bad for business. And maybe starting with that one, like how do you deal with that? Like that risk, or maybe even some fear around it, what may happen.
I always look back to our Bill of Rights, which is behind me on the wall,
Yeah.
and it talks about taking care of our staff, there's taking care of our customers, being a socially responsible company,
Hmm.
making sure that we're financially solvent, and to do it with
Hmm.
honesty, integrity, and respect. And I always tell people in our early days, I probably focused as I probably should have on making sure that the financial piece was together because you always want to make sure that you're going to survive. And as we've got to be somewhat financially strong, I tended to gravitate more towards the other components of our Bill of Rights. And what I found is that the more I focused on making sure the other items were taking care of our staff, our customers, being in the community, and doing it with honesty, integrity, and respect, the better the bottom line was.
Hmm.
So when we've made decisions that reflect who we are, irrespective of what the economic toll may come
Hmm.
out of that decision, we actually, in some ironic way, have always benefited from that. So the decisions like 100% organic produce, yes, we may have lost some grape sales to customers who wanted to or needed to get grapes in January, but it overall created a stronger loyalty and dedication to our brand because customers knew we would stand by what we believed in. And I always point out to decisions like removing plastic in our water aisle.
Hmm.
Uh, that was a huge decision, when I first brought it up, I think most people in the company were saying, "You really want to do this?" Because from a strictly a quantity standpoint, if you looked at the top 50 items that grocery stores sell, water and plastic is probably at least 10 to 20 items in that top 50. But we felt like we really needed to walk the talk about being sustainable and all the concerns about too much plastic. And so we made the decision, and I'm sure there are people who go elsewhere to buy their water in plastic, but I can tell you, especially at our Carmel Valley store, we've probably maybe doubled our sales in water since we made that decision 5 years ago. And I think when we did that, there was limited selection, especially of water and glass. Now there's a lot of selection, and I'm not sure if that was the result of us and other stores doing the same
Hmm.
thing. But I think we make decisions based on what we feel, who we are, and what we're trying to accomplish. And yes, sometimes it may hurt the bottom line, but
Yep.
I think it's overall better for us as a company that people can say, yeah, we have to, it's inconvenient. We may have to do some shopping elsewhere, but they represent an added value when we go shopping at Jimbo's because we know that they're, say, walking the talk. And so, yeah, stuff like that doesn't really, I don't fear it as much as maybe I would have before because I just ultimately believe that we have to make decisions in the best interest of those things that we talked about in the Bill of Rights, and the
Hmm.
bottom line will take care of itself, and in many cases will be better because we make decisions in taking care of the other items.
Thank you for sharing about that. It's amazing, this idea. You talk about integrity. We used to work together, right? You always talked about integrity, and what you're talking about here with like the organic produce and the plastic water bottles is integrity. This is what we believe. We walk, you said it, right? We walk that walk of what we're saying. We're not just checking boxes. We're not just getting lip service. You're showing up with it. And I think you started that even at the beginning. You mentioned how you transitioned from being worried about the bottom line and like survival to
Right.
that was a different stage of the company because of your financial stewardship and leadership of the company. But there was a time when you were making those hard decisions, and there was a lot of risk financially. As I remember, you started the business after I think you'd had hepatitis or something, and you'd used
Right.
all your money to get better, and then you started the business almost with no money, and yet you still were true to the integrity of what you were trying to do. Is that a fair statement?
Well, I said when I opened my first store, and I did get hepatitis right before I opened, I said, listen, I don't care if I make nothing. I did care, but my point was, in my mind, I was saying, all right, if I make nothing or if I make $1 million, as long as I can look at myself at the end of the day, if I did it with the honesty and integrity and respect, then I have nothing to be shameful of or upset about. I just gotta follow my heart and move in that direction. And I just wanted to be able to look at myself and say, you did the right thing, and hey, you failed, but you were true to yourself. And thankfully we've been successful. And I say we because I may have been the person who started it, but there's so many people who I've been fortunate and grateful to have been part of this journey with me, that it's certainly a far cry from a one-man band. There's just a lot of people who helped me along the way, steered me in the right direction, who've been part of this journey within the company and outside the company. And so when you first started talking about the whole manufacturer, distribution, retail relationship, to me, it's, I believe that in part, not just in our business, in our industry, but just in life, it really is about relationships.
Mm-hmm. And you're the master, Jimbo, of relationships. I've never met anyone more connected and who swings so far above, I guess, your weight, so to speak, right? Because you're connected with everybody. It's amazing in our industry.
Well, I think we've, when I look at the industry and our involvement in it, what we've tried to do is, again, with those relationships, have honesty, integrity, and respect. So, we've had opportunities to work with small farmers, and if we say we're going to buy something from them, we buy it from them, even if we're overloaded on the item, and we pay them more than they would get paid if they were going through distribution.
And a quick side note on that is my understanding, at least when I worked there, there was like 20 something farms in San Diego that supplied you. And
it's more than that now. I don't have the number. I think it's over 30 local farms now that we deal with on a regular basis.
Supporting the local farmers, and then many of those farms started years ago, and you were in many ways like the business that allowed them to do this, to live their dreams of doing organic farming, right? I mean, those relationships between the producer and you created a supply chain that wouldn't have existed were it not for you saying, hey, I'm going to go do this and come supply me.
Well, I think that's what I was referring to. So when some of these farmers who might have been conventional or just starting off the farm would reach out to us, we would, to the best of our ability, to say, listen, if you grow this, we'll buy it from you, and gave them a means of knowing that they have an outlet of being able to sell items. And so I think what it also has done for us is, when items are tough to get or there's a shortage of supply, because we've had these long-standing relationships, we've gotten, I would say, a little extra service, because they know that, in the past when things were tough for them, we supported them. And I'm not really as involved in produce anymore. It's always been my passion and last day-to-day operation.
You and your watermelon, Jimbo.
Yeah, I still do the watermelon thing all the time. Now I'm into drinking a quart of watermelon juice every day. But I think those relationships have benefited us, and we have, Ryan, our director of produce, has done an awesome job of maintaining and increasing those relationships. And
Ryan's amazing. You have a real superstar in him. Such a humble guy.
He started I think he was in high school, or maybe just out of high school. He'll probably correct me. But he started just as a produce clerk, and he's done a phenomenal job and has grown with the company. His wife used to, before they got married, was just working in our store, and that's how they met. So it's actually a Jimbo's family story.
Jimbo's family.
We have a couple kids, and it's an awesome story, and it's one of those things that makes you feel good about what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, totally. There's so many stories like that. I remember from my time being with you at Jimbo's. You mentioned like the produce, and I also know there's so many emerging CPG brands that started at Jimbo's, and I'm curious about your heart for like the emerging brands and being that avenue. Their first opportunity, oftentimes after the farmers market, it is Jimbo's, and why do you make that such a priority? Is it fairly like a business objective? Is it a heart for the emerging brands?
Well, I think even when you were with us, we had deep conversations about how we can really support emerging brands, and especially small-time brands that are wanting to get launched. And it's tough, and anything we can do to help create the opportunity for a small brand to get started, we want to do that. And sometimes, to be very honest, we've been approached and the ingredients don't our criteria, and we have to say, listen, if you change the ingredients, primarily if you put organic ingredients in the item, we'd certainly help you get launched, at least in our company. And I think we've influenced a number of companies to do such, which benefits us and benefits the planet, to be honest.
Do you have a story of a brand maybe years ago that you influenced them and they ended up growing? And
they have more stories than I do. I forget all about these. I know that when we walk expo floor, they'll say, people come up to me and they say, oh, we love Jimbo's. We were one of the first to get in your store. You were the first store that we got into. Or they'll come to me and say, we changed our ingredients just so that we can get into your store. And I'm a little far removed from it now. We have our own some great buyers on our buying team, but it's kind of neat to know that some kind of influence and what we think is in the right direction. But yeah, the people who want to get launched, we try to help and support them. Especially our buying team on the grocery side have done an awesome job. Jason really worked with some of the smaller manufacturers that are trying to get started, and they really are patient with them to help them with whether it's labeling or ingredient issues or whatever to support that. And it's one of those other aspects of what we do that kind of makes us feel proud that we're in this industry and we are able to get small companies, and some of them will become larger companies, and
yes,
we can say, hey, we help you get started. Remember,
No,
so
seriously, Jimbo, when we would walk Expo together, it's like you're a rock star. People are coming out of their booths, they're giving you hugs, they're giving you samples and accolades. There's so much gratitude I would always experience when we walk together. It's just amazing how you in San Diego, and not one of the biggest chains in America, but truly influenced so many companies. I mean, over the decades that you've been in business. And something else that I don't think a lot of people know about is that you were one of the founding fathers, if you will, of Infra. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I was one of the 4 founders that originally started Infra. But as far as the accolades, it's again one of those things I say, my name's on the building, so I get a lot of credit for
Yes.
Stuff that I probably shouldn't get credit for. Maybe I've been part of it, and I'm just, like I said earlier, grateful for the people who have worked with Jimbo's before and currently working, because they deserve as much credit as I do in regards to where we are today and what we've done. And like I said, my name's on the building. It should be thousands of other names alongside mine. But yeah, we did start Infra, I don't know, it seems like 15 years ago. And again, another source of pride to gather the independents to kind of form a group of stores that would have a voice in the industry. But with that voice, I've always said it comes responsibility. And the same with the voice that Jimbo's may have in the industry. We want to be upfront and honest and transparent, and if we can influence the industry, more power to us, more power to infra, but certainly take that responsibility seriously.
Well, I think I understand the responsibility side, and what I see is, what I think about is like how many natural independents exist today that wouldn't otherwise exist because of the contracts and things with distributors that Infra negotiates, right? And the work that Infra does on behalf of these retailers, who often are just like trying to keep their head above water running their stores, right? It's just really, I don't know how to thank you enough on behalf of our industry, because Infra probably is the reason that dozens and dozens of these retailers exist today. I mean, otherwise they might be paying 10% more on their contracts. Is that a fair statement?
I think Infra has been a great organization, a great source of support for a lot of independents, especially the smaller independents who don't have the wherewithal or perhaps the experience, and have gone into an industry where a lot of people, where I came from, was because it was something they believed in and they were passionate about, and yet may not have had, like I said, the experience. And so to get support from being able to have contracts with a national distributor and better pricing deals, and then also support from when you have a problem with your business and you need to source out or find information, they have great options for you to utilize. And so, yeah, Infra has come a long way from when we first started and didn't know if we were going to be able to get off the ground to I don't know how many storefronts.
It's massive.
300, 350,
yeah.
a couple $1 billion worth of
yes.
sales. It definitely has a voice in the industry, which I'm proud of, because I think at the time Whole Foods was the voice in the industry.
Yep.
It's interesting because I know a lot of other independents were not upset, but didn't look fondly upon Whole Foods. And I actually feel differently. When I opened my store, the industry wasn't what it is today. And in some ways, Whole Foods opened the door to the industry, for the industry to become what it has become. And so I'm grateful for them doing what they've done to make natural foods and organic foods to be in the mainstream. And at the time I opened my store, I didn't know if I could make a living, but I opened it at a time when, as it turns out, the industry began to flourish, and in large part because of what Whole Foods accomplished and their role. But I think as time went on, it became, for me, I would say, yeah, they deserve the respect, but they shouldn't be the only voice in the industry. So to have an Infra organization to also have a voice certainly made sense. And as things turned out, Whole Foods became bought by Amazon, which probably doesn't have the same mindset that the original Whole Foods organization started with. And so it's probably even more important that Infra and even the co-op group have a voice to be able to have a role in where the industry is going.
I love that. You think about that too, that billions of dollars, you comment the number of retailers, and then the ability to operate kind of as one group. Did you imagine it would be as big as it is today? Was that your vision, that it would be what it is, or did it exceed that?
That's an interesting question. I think, like I said, that first 6 months, we didn't know if we could even launch.
Right.
I think there were times when the four of us, along with the first executive director, Corinne, were just trying to see if we can make it through. And there were, what usually was happening, the four of us, Mike Cianciarillo from, at the time, Earth Fare, Jonathan King from New Frontiers, and Scott Roseman from New Leaf. And I think there were times during the initial startup that we all felt like, is this really worth it? Because we were more entrepreneurs trying to run our business, and yet we're having to launch an organization
Right.
that we
A
didn't have the
major
time.
organization.
Yeah,
Yes.
we didn't have the time. And I think, Corinne had come on as a consultant, and we finally said, listen, we can't continue to do this. We really need to hire someone, which turned out to be Corinne, to kind of oversee it, and we can participate and help it get going. But we didn't have the time to spend 20 hours a week trying to get this launched and still run our stores. And so it's if I look back on it, did I think it would become as big as this? I think you always have wild dreams, but I didn't really anticipate it to get to where it is today. And it's many other opportunities, and I think it's growing pains for them, and I'm sure there are a lot. I'm not as involved in it, certainly aware of what's going on, but there are a lot of independents in that organizations that have challenges right now. So whatever support that they can give those stores is beneficial to those stores and the industry.
Agreed. And one question on this idea I've been thinking lately. When you look back history, I imagine people often think it's like this straight line. Like, of course, it's preordained. You were going to be successful at Jimbo's, and you'd found Infra, and of course that would be successful. I mean, and you mentioned also some things earlier, almost about this like fearlessness. But were there ever moments when you had a decision like I don't know if this is going to work out, and this could be bad? Do you have those moments in your story?
You mentioned that I got hepatitis before my store, and at the time I went to see the doctor, and he looked at me, did some tests, and he says, you're really yellow, your hemoglobin count is really up. And he said, what's your story? I said, well, I'm opening up this natural food store, and I've been working, 12, 14 hours a day, 7 days a week. And he says, well, you got to stop working. And I said, I can't. And he says, what do you mean? I said, I don't have any money left, and I'm supposed to open the store a month ago, and you're asking me to stop working. He said, well, you have to. I mean, you got to take care of yourself. And we argued back and forth, and finally he said, you can work 5 days a week, 4 hours a day. And I said, how long do you think before I go through? If I do that, when will I get through the hepatitis issue? And he said, maybe 3 weeks, but come back in 2 weeks. So I went back. And so, I went, again, that was probably the first time I said, well, am I really going to be able to make it? I have concerns. I really didn't have any money. I was grateful that my parents, who had sold a bunch of stuff to help me get started, basically said to me, worry about your health. Don't worry about the money. We'll figure it out, at some point. Anyway, I went back 2 weeks later, and he did some tests on me, and he looked at me, and I wasn't as yellow as I was. And he says, looks like you're through it. He said, what have you been doing? I said, I've been working 7 days a week, probably 10 hours a day instead of 14. And so,
eating.
That was the first time, before I even opened, I said, am I going to make it? But I think one of the things that I've been blessed with along the way is whenever I had doubts or challenges, I've had either my family to rely on or the people working with me to encourage me, to stand by me, to believe in me and what I was trying to do, that I didn't feel like I was out on an island trying to accomplish something all by myself. Certainly I had to make decisions, that I take ownership of, but there were always people I felt that, would listen to me, hear me out, give me feedback, be upfront with me, and would really support me in trying to overcome whatever obstacles that were in front of me. And so that made the challenges less imposing, and quite frankly, made the journey that much more enjoyable. I think sometimes, and I'm sure you look back at your experiences in what you did, some of the greatest challenges and the toughest times become the fondest memories, because you were able to overcome them. And becomes the foundation of
Yep.
the experience you had to make you a better person, hopefully a better leader,
Totally
and
aligned.
yeah, if everything was so easy, we'll be doing it, and that's just not the case. And I don't, I don't saying you don't want times when things are easy, but I think the challenges make us better people and make us
I agree.
a stronger person, and test your will,
Hmm.
and to that piece, when people talk to me, when you were talking about emerging companies,
Yeah.
or people who want to get in the industry, one of the things I always tell them, I say, are you passionate about what you're doing? And I ask that question because I know that if you're passionate about what you're doing, whether it's developing a product or opening up a store, or whatever it is, it becomes easier to overcome the challenges and obstacles because because you believe in it, you have a passion for it. Whereas if you're doing it strictly because it's a money thing, it's easy to give up when you hit hard times. So, when you really believe in what you're doing and there's a value to it, yeah, you're going to hit some tough spots, but you're going to push through it because that's who you are. That's what your life is. It doesn't mean you're going to win or you're going to be successful, but you're going
No
to.
guarantees.
Yeah, and like I'm sure, like I said, when you had Monterey, I'm sure there were times when you were questioning,
A
things
lot.
turn out, but you believed in what you were doing. You felt like you were doing the
Yeah.
right thing, and and it makes it, and it becomes that much more rewarding.
It does. It does. I would just, what's coming to me from what you're sharing is, I think it takes away something when someone is fearless. There's no courage required if there is no fear. And I truly believe, my own story, and definitely in yours, there's tremendous amount of courage. When you saw things that were chances stacked against you, there was no money to start your business, and you'd been really sick, and yet somehow you still the will and effectively the courage to go through. And I think the other thing that comes up for me is that this struggle is what's us, like, is maybe the purpose of life on some level. It's like why are we here? It's really to find out what we're made out of. If we're never underwater, we never know how tall we are. And really it's about constantly kind of pushing a little bit, but that's some kind of a faith, whether that's in a God, the universe, or yourself, whatever it is, that it's going to work out. And I sense from what you were saying earlier is that you kind of always knew there's always a sense of destiny, almost in a way. It's going to work out. Is that fair? A sense of destiny?
I think whatever way it would have unfolded, it would have been
whatever was supposed to unfold.
If I failed, but I gained from the experience. Hopefully, every time you fail, you learn something about yourself.
You do.
You pick yourself up off the ground and move forward. I like to think I'm not the person that when I get knocked down or fail, to just sit there and commiserate.
You're not.
Pick myself up and say, okay, well, let's go forward, and see what we can accomplish despite that failure. And I think that's part of life, and it's again, sometimes it's depressing or frustrating, but when you get past it, I think that in and of itself becomes the story of your life,
Yes, the fabric.
Because, hey, I remember when this happened and I had to do this. It turned out all right. I'm a better person because of that. And so
I agree with you. I've taken to journaling too, just to capture the struggles. I actually have a part in my journaling every day, like what could I have done better? What have I learned? What am I grateful for? And just be able to go back a year or 2, 3 years back and just see what I was going through and what I overcame. Because it's easy to forget. It's easy. I think our minds can naturally move on and focus on the positive, but it's really important to know that the hard days came and the hard days went, and you made it through.
Yeah, George Harrison, all things will pass,
They will.
Yeah.
The famous philosopher.
In the moment, it doesn't feel like that,
No. Crushing.
I remember when I was opening my Carmel Valley store, the first Carmel Valley store, and we were trying to put a schedule together, and there was a date that we had to open. They were having they had a phase one in the shopping center that had already been open for a number of years, and phase two was going to open at sometime in, like, I think October of '92. And it was maybe in June we were going through some planning, and the first person my contractor, my GC, and I met with was this. We had to build an elevator for because we had a second floor, and to meet ADA legalities, we had to build an elevator or have an elevator installed. And we met with this elevator company, and he took us through the timeline. And at the end of the timeline, I realized there was no way we could open up in October. And so I was talking to my GC, who's still with me. He's built every store I've had since 1984.
I've met him. He's a character, like you.
He is a character. JD, great guy. He said, listen, if you're going to get uptight about every time we meet with someone and they give you a timeline and you think we can't make it, you're going to go crazy. He said, they're giving it to you. You can't get too consumed by that. And I said, well, what do you mean? He says, well, there's always ways to get things happening faster, whatever, and to overcome it and whatever. And, it turned out right, because we did open. We opened the opening. We got everything.
Made it happen.
But it's interesting because now when we go through building stores or timelines, he tends to get more frustrated than I do. And I say, listen, we're going to get through it, all things fast. Whatever happens, and I've had to heart, in the moment, it feels like, man, this is pain. I don't want to do it.
Yes.
But,
it's okay to complain sometimes.
Yeah, it is, and things turn out the way they're meant to turn out.
Well,
hopefully learn from it and get better because of it.
Well, that last store that you and him partnered on, I was there at the beginning of it, was the new Carmel Valley one, and that store is a masterpiece. Congratulations. It's busy whenever I go. The lines are just wild. Has it been good?
Yeah, the store has really grown, and it continues to grow as the rest of the stores. Our stores are doing phenomenally well right now, but the Carmel Valley store has become our centerpiece, and I think we still have a lot more opportunities at that.
You do too.
And
just getting started.
Yeah. Well, it's just getting all ducks in order and continuing to move the needle. That we always try to do.
Which you do. And there's one other area I wanted to cover while we were together today, and that is distribution. Yeah. I hear a lot of complaints, and of course I used to be a distributor too. So hold on here one second. I'm hearing some outside noise. Give me one. Oh my gosh, decided to work in my yard today. So the distributor has become the punching bag, and I hear, this is a lot of what I was thinking about when I created this podcast, is like, I get it. Manufacturers and retailers, that relationship can be okay, but I'm seeing the distributor often as being a challenge. And I know you've been, I would say, extremely adept at building relationships with your distributors and deep partnerships. And I'm just curious if you have any thoughts about the current state of distribution and what the role of the retailers are in all of this as well. Because it just feels like there's a lot of people unhappy with the performance of distributors today.
First, let me quantify this by saying that qualifying this is that I go back to that we're in a relationship business, and so I really try to have either myself or whoever is responsible for the main relationship with the distributor to really understand and be empathetic with whatever situation is going on. And I think it's sometimes we get focused on our own issues on the retail world. In Jimbo's, we say, oh, this is going on, and now we have an issue. We can't get the product from a distributor, or they're going to be late, and we can't. This is causing issues on our when we can receive the order, or we don't know. They promise us items and we don't get it, or our sale items hasn't arrived, and so it has a challenge. But it'd be one thing if one distributor was experiencing the challenges, but all the distributors seem to be having similar challenges. And part of it is, the ever-changing retail world or labor. And, you have to look at it. If you can't, I mean, if you're short on labor and you have to bring in new people and you're trying to, how quickly can you get them up to speed to know, when they put a pallet together, they get the right products on the pallet. They know what to look for, and it's hard, and it doesn't justify the issues, but it explains, they may have challenges. So, we certainly bring to their attention when we're having those issues so they can be aware of our concerns. But, we try to be understanding of that at the same time. And, hopefully they can work towards improving whatever issues we're raising so that we don't face them anymore. But I think there's been since COVID, there's been supply issues which affect the manufacturer. The pricing has created challenges because I think, retailers or customers saying prices are going up, and we're saying, well, the prices are going up to us, and distributors saying, well, the prices are going up to us, and it becomes a snowball effect. And so we try to work with our distribution partners to ensure they understand our concerns, our needs. Like I said, we try to be empathetic with them, and really, if part of it is really communication, and some distributors do a better job of communicating back and forth than others. But I think we all got to recognize we're in this together,
Yeah, that's the point. That's what we're missing. We are in this together.
Well, I mean, we're not going to be selling anything if we can't get our product.
Yeah.
Manufacturers aren't going to be selling anything if we don't put it on the shelves. Distributors aren't going to be in business if we're not buying it from them. So, there's a reliance on each of us to make it work. And I think not only make it work, but try to, be more efficient and, be transparent in our communication and work together to make it better for all of us. Because at the end of the day, we're all trying to, earn a living, but we need to rely on each other to be successful. And so I don't think you want to eliminate one distribution, because you're not going to go anywhere without it,
Right.
So
Right.
and I'm a distributor in the past and understand that there's always the challenges, and I'm sure that you work tirelessly to overcome those, but there's still going to be challenges, and you've probably upset retailers before, and hopefully they understood.
Never Jimbos.
I'm sure a few times, but you never heard it from me. I just kept it in the dark because I don't.
We don't communicate well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think what a lot of people, forget is just the complexity of the supply chain nowadays, right? It is, the amount of products, the amount of emerging products, the multi-temperatures that we're dealing with. You mentioned the labor, the fact that distributors, like with many of their most of the programs with any retailer of any size, are actually below the distributor cost of operations, right? And so they're trying to shift that back to the manufacturer, and there's just a lot of current system that I believe that our distributor partners in the space are working to resolve. And I think to your point earlier, communication is the key to that. We have to be talking. And one thing I noticed about you especially when I worked with you, is you could call the CEO of K and have a 5-store chain at the time. You're able to call the CEO, right? Like you say, you do a football game. You're hanging out with the senior leaders of UNFI, and you're just connected in a way that when you do call, they know who you are. And I think that's what I always noticed about you and your relationships, is those relationships have value directions. I mean, would that be any other retailer out there, is like, get to know the people as people even?
Yeah, I become a nuisance to people at times. So somehow I get to have them listen to what my garbage that I out at them. I think part of that has to do with when in those relationships, there is a business component, but there's also a personal side.
There we go. That's Jimbo, that's what you always, everybody, there's always a personal side. They're a person.
They're a person, they have a family, they have outside interests out of the work. And so it's, they're people, and, you get to know them, and you enjoy the relationship. And, I think it's been helpful for us to have those relationships, because there have been times when, hopefully few and far between, when you need to make a call that hopefully that helps you get over a certain hump. But yeah, you have to invest the time. It's the same thing in, when you people into your workforce and you take the time to train them, you hopefully, if you don't take the time to train them, you're gonna have an employee who just knows where to clock in, knows where the bathroom is, and doesn't know much more. And we've been at some point early on, I would have people come and say, well, why are we spending so much time to train them? Once they're trained, they tend to go out and find not a better job, but may have more responsibility or pay them more. And I said, if the only thing is give people an opportunity to better themselves, and they've taken that and to heart, and have been able to have an experience that lends themselves to having a better life, then we've been successful. It's not always going to be, someone's going to stay at Jimbo's. We have a lot of been with us, 5 or more years. But we've had people been with us, a few months, 6 months, a year or two, and we've been just a pit stop on their journey of life. But I've always felt like I'm grateful for the time they spent and what they've contributed to the organization. And so if my hope is that they've had a positive experience, and hopefully they've benefited from that experience to help in their life going forward. And so the same way when we have relationships with our distribution partners, it's part of the experience, is having relationships with people and enjoying that relationship, and know that they're part of the journey with you. And it's not always going to be to the end. People are going to split off at different times, but enjoy the part that they're walking with you. And hopefully it's a relationship that you will carry on into the future. And so yeah, it's one of the things I like about the industry, because it's not just that's
your magic, Jimbo. That is your magic. I truly believe you care about the whole, and it's sincere, and it's humble, and it's so kind, and it's loving. You love people, and it comes out. You can't help yourself but connect with everybody that's out there. I mean, even when I walk stores with you, you're talking to everybody. There's no one below, no one are people, and they're all of value. And that's what I experienced with you.
I'm going to have to hire you as my promotional agent going forward.
I'm very expensive, Jimbo.
Yeah, but if you can talk like that about me, and people are going to believe that, then it might be worth it.
They will. They'll believe it. I want to thank you. It's one of the great honors of my life is to be able to call you my friend, and I'm grateful that you were the first person that interviewed as part of this podcast project, Reconnected. Thank you so much for everything you've done for our industry, for me personally, and for our communities that I live in.
It's an honor to be the first one, that hopefully grows into something bigger, so that I can say, when you become nationally recognized for your podcasts, I said, well, let's go back to that first one. Who was that guy that was on there? Nobody, but hey, at least I got you launched, so give me a little credit for it. But it's always a pleasure to chat with you, Luke. I know that you have your heart in the right place, and you're trying to make a positive impact in the industry, and in the right way, and not just in the industry, in the world. You walk the talk. talk, and your heart's in the right place, and all the success to you in whatever endeavors you may end up doing the rest of your career. And it's like I said, I appreciate the kind words, and I appreciate being the first one on your podcast.
Thank you. I stand on your shoulders, Jimbo. I hope it isn't too heavy for you.
Look forward to seeing you in person, hopefully at Expo. Save a spot.
I will see you there. Thank you, Jimbo.
Take care, my man.
Okay, bye.